This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to the Coastside Fire Protection District Board of Directors regular board meeting, January 25th, 2023. Roll call, please, Jane.
Director Cockrell.
Here.
Director Hannah.
Here.
Director McKimmey.
Here.
Director Sherrill.
Here.
President Burke.
Here.
Thank you.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any members of the public who would like to make a comment or statement at this time?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, did you wish to make a comment, Sid?
I have a really unstable thing. Did you say raise my hand or make a comment?
Make a comment. Do you have any?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, please.
Two of the things I have, one is about the tree ordinance that was extended until, I shouldn't say tree ordinance, I should say the permit waiver from the county for, it was extended till July 2023. And I just want to clarify if there's a reason why they didn't include the Monterey cypress or Monterey pines, because those are some of the trees that were worst in the storm. And then the other question I have might be covered under the inspection of businesses, but it was quite a shock to a lot of Coastsiders to find out that there were people living in really insane living conditions on these farms recently when the shooting happened. And I remember from years ago that they used to inspect businesses, and I was wondering if you guys inspect farms and agriculture type of facilities for fire safety, and also just to see if there any residential properties, do you inspect those for safety? So that were my two questions.
Thank you, Sid. I don't know if we have a quick answer on either one of those.
I can give kind of a brief layout here. Is for the tree ordinance in relation to the Monterey pines. I believe that's determined by the county arborist on what is allowed as far as an invasive tree versus a native to the area, and that's based on geographical area within the county, I believe, or the state. That would be a question that we could follow up on to find out why that's not included. But that's my initial
Thank
thought.
you. It did sort of seem as though a lot of them were breaking down in the storm. So, you know, it would be nice if they were something mentioned that they were 5 feet from a house, or not just for fire danger. Of course, it came about because of the CZU fire, but now we've had these big storms. So that's just my suggestion. If they could add that tree and also maybe a 5 foot from a property. And then the other question, Gary.
There a quick answer to the second question, or we need to get?
Or Jonathan.
So this is specific to the incident the other day, correct? Is that what the question is stemming from? So some of this is within Coastside, there are areas that obviously need additional attention, and there has been developed a code enforcement program under the previous board supervisor, Don Horsley, which we participated in. Specifically, that was kind of more located in the Princeton area, specific to these areas for business tracking within San Mateo County, because I believe this falls not within the Coastside Fire Protection District, but within for the Spanish town specifically. I can't speak to the county's mechanism for tracking businesses, nor if they have a functioning list to be able to look at for follow-up.
Could you please find the I'll follow up and find out, and maybe we can get it related to the answer to the city.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Because one of them, I think, was within the city limits right across from Ocean Colony and next to the soil farm. One of those businesses were. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sid. First of all, we have a motion to approve the consent calendar. So we have a second. I second it. Please note that the Director McKimmey is asked to be recused from voting on the consent calendar. Any comments, questions? Roll call, please, Jane.
Director Cockrell,
Yes.
Director Hannah,
Yes.
Director Cheryl,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes. Thank you.
Motion passes 401 with Director McKinney recused.
Moving on to item D, which is not part of the consent calendar, but review and discuss and approve an agreement with the Bay Area Tree Specialist for vegetation abatement services. Chief Cox.
Thank you. This is on the heels of the vegetation abatement program that we have. In the fall, the fire marshal's office sends out a list to the lots that need to be cleared. If they don't clear them, then the district comes in and clears those lots and then puts a tax lien on the property. If you remember October-ish, we put out an RFP for this service. We got no respondents. So we've engaged the company that we used last year, which is Bay Area Tree Specialist. The reason it's coming before you is because we do believe it'll be beyond $50,000, correct if I'm wrong, Tyler, of which we will theoretically get back through the tax process.
Yes. Before we have any discussion, do I have a motion to approve resolution 2023-04?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Discussion and questions? We have one person who bid or said they would
We had no bids.
take this.
We had no bids.
No bids, no bids. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Roll call, please, Gene. Gene?
I'm sorry. Director Cockrell,
Yes.
Director Hannah, Director McKinney,
Yes.
Director Cheryl,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Yeah. Moving on to continuing business, item A, review and discuss mid-year operating plans deliverable, Chief Cox. And let me just make a note that this is just review the operating plan has been done periodically, and this is just another review that we've had some done reviews on previously. Right?
That's correct. Yeah. So every January, we try to bring forward the operating plan just for a mid-year review of where we're at with all of the different programs. A lot of them you'll see are ongoing because they're ongoing projects. You'll see the full list of everything that for the operating plan that we plan to do this year and have the answer any questions about it.
Information, questions on the operating plan? Anything that have any ideas or comments on? I noted that I can't put my finger on it, but one of them is to approve again for the district of distinction in 2023, Chief.
That's correct. Yeah. I think it's October, November, our district of distinction expires. So either Chris or Michelle will be in touch to make sure that your certifications are on file and that the training is on track for the directors.
Other comments or questions?
My other comment would be, I noticed open house annually, stations 40, 41, and 44. We had a very nice open house at 41. Is there plans to schedule additional open houses at 40 and 44?
Yeah, I think this year, post-COVID, we will go back to that.
Okay.
Getting back to having open house in each community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Somewhat related, this might be part of the fire chief report, but the maintain functionality of district operations center. I know we had that up and operating in our recent past. Is everything working well and
Yeah,
satisfaction?
a very good lesson learned here. Director Hannah or Director Cheryl might be able to give more context to it, but you'll remember last year we bought the first satellite-based internet system for the district. And when everything went dark on the coast, this facility here still had internet, which was the way that they were communicating with the dispatch center was through the CAD terminal here. So good lesson learned in the fact that we had the redundancy. We're actually going to take the next step now and put in satellite at all three of the stations for redundancy because we can't find ourselves in that position again across all.
Wow.
What's the vendor we're using?
Starlink.
I was going to ask you to start with.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They're shaping up to be the best.
So was the district EOC incapacity?
So the district's DOC was functioning. The Coastside EOC, which is where Dave was and Director Cheryl would serve, was at the EOC at the substation. And they were active. Did you guys have internet there?
We did, most of the time. There were a couple of glitches, but then it was restored shortly.
On the subject, and it may come up in a different location later, but of satellite redundancy, and what occurred to me during the moments that we were operating during volunteers was to have redundancy on vehicles. Right? If your vehicle also then wouldn't have the CAD and fire apparatus vehicles. So I don't know if that's something that would be worth looking into.
Yeah.
From a cost perspective, I have no idea, obviously, it's much bigger than just Starlink, right?
No, I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
We've talked about it. Gary and I have talked about it. I called Gary after the storm and said, every fixed asset is gonna have a Starlink at some point, right? It's inevitable.
I do know that Starlink has opened up to RV use and whatnot, which is a moving vehicle. I don't know how well it works when you're physically moving versus stationary. I'm sure there's some product out there that's on the site.
And in fact, the RV service, you can get faster than that in the residential or commercial, so.
Right.
it's good.
Next year's budget.
Other question? Okay. Thank you, Chief. Moving on to continuing business, item D, second reading fire code ordinance 2023-01, Chief Collins.
Thank you, and Fire Marshal's office is here. This is the second reading of the new code that takes effect this month, is that right, Todd?
Yes.
The code is in the board packet.
Mhm.
Just as a administrative note, I noticed that the agenda calls us 2003-01. The resolution should read 2022-03. The ordinance is correct, I believe. Okay. Do we have any further comments or questions? Chief, do you have any?
No, I just that this is updated every 3 years, and essentially what is voted on is the amendments that the Fire Marshal's office is making to the California Fire Code to meet the bill.
Any comments or questions from the board?
Just to ask, if you're satisfied with all of the changes that have been made.
Well, yes, definitely. We also try and, utilize the code to benefit the area in the work and the people that are building here, right? So it's dynamic to each area. So we're able to streamline the process, make it easier for the applicant, taxpayer as well.
We have a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-03. So moved. Second. Moved and second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell,
Yes.
Director Hannah. Director McKimmy,
Yes.
Director Cheryl,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Continuing on, item C on the continuing business. Consider for approval update on paramedic training program for volunteer firefighters. Chief Armstrong.
Sure, thank you very much, President Burke. Just a kind of a refresher, we brought this last month. Just kind of thinking kind of outside the box of trying to plug a little bit of a hole in that constant paramedic vacancy that we have within the district. And we had located a training program. We brought it to the board, said you guys would give us direction to go ahead and continue with the selection process. So we, on the ground, if we could get approved for this. So we did have a selection process. What that consisted of was we put interest out to all the volunteers, the Coastside volunteers. We had 4 folks submit interest. 3 kind of competed in the process, and then what that was a written test and then followed up with an oral interview or skills evaluation. Of those 3, 1 ended up pulling out because he got a full-time job that would restrict him from participating in it. But we did have 2 people that were successful in that process. Just an update, we got a little bit more information in the last month as we've explored this. had originally reported to this board that the cost of that program is $15,000 per person. And that we could get up to $6,000 per person from Nova Works, which is a workforce development outfit for the county. We were being told 15,000, well, it was really 15,000 in change, which we paid it to $15,897. So we might as well call it 16,000. The other thing with that, in speaking more with Nova, they said that $6,000 per student is not a slam dunk. They have to have a conversation with the individuals and make sure that they qualify financially. I suspect that volunteers that will not be working for a year would qualify financially, but I can't guarantee that. So what we have right now is 2 folks that are very interested. They've made the commitment they would like to attend. The cost could be up to $16,000 per person to the district. Just for context on that, $16,000 is the cost of a paramedic engineer for about 2 months. So with the vacancies that we currently carry in the district, you have more than enough cost savings within the personnel dollars that are pledged within the contract to support these couple of individuals. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, board, comments? Patrick?
Anything further, I mean, you had mentioned previously about being able to house individuals at stations.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Being that it's related to the volunteers, we've discussed the same topic in committee, and I think there's still some things that we're working on. But one of the other questions is, are we going to do anything else with the individual, whether it's some kind of food stipend or any kind of other support, financial support from that perspective. Now, I did read through all this when it was available, your most recent report in here. And so I was a bit surprised that the Nova Works money is possible, you know, we're not sure. Right? It's a
Soft.
yeah, very softer than I thought, I guess.
It was softer than we all thought.
So I guess we need to look at that, because that basically doubles, not quite doubles, but increases the cost by $6,000 more. They did not receive it.
And as far as any additional, as far as like food stipend or so on and so forth, obviously that's up to this board. The only question I might have it would be the June, and if any sort of level of payment stipend or any would somehow end up constituting an employment relationship, and if that could cause
An answer, but I'm pretty sure if it's like, you know, expense related, like fuel or.
I'm not a yes.
Maybe some sort of per diem, I guess that's what
Right.
we're discussing here. And per diem doesn't necessarily mean employee, does it? I understand the problem.
Reimbursement.
The reimbursement and employment are 2 separate issues, and they do not intersect.
Well, I do realize as well that there's a time frame on this, right? Because the first class starts in March.
start March 29th.
And I don't know about when it has to be signing up by a certain time or if it goes on or
I'm supposed to have names to the program by next week, of course, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't submit a name and then maybe back out, but we have to have names of potential participants in by next week. So, and I plan on submitting the same for San Mateo County.
So it seems to me that housing we've got covered.
Right.
And some sort of a per diem to cover food and anything else, while they're there would certainly be in order, at least in my view. As you said, reimbursement, but maybe just come up with an arbitrary number on a per day basis or something like that.
And we're happy to follow.
Going back to the fact that it's somewhat urgent, right, to get these names in, that we haven't really decided. I mean, with the volunteer committee, Director Popple and myself, we're planning on coming back to this next month to then present the board with what we decided. But if there is a time issue, I don't know.
You know, that brings up a point of it certainly helped me if I had just a little bit more of a chronology and dates as to what needs to be done and when and so forth. You say the program is beginning next month,
March 29th.
Yeah, and you know, specifically, what are the things that identified all this? Questions or team or whatever the kind of program. I just personally, I don't, the money part of it does not bother me, is whatever is reasonable needs to be done, that you all would support and do that. But I think from our fiduciary responsibility, we need to know pretty clearly what's at stake. Because we could be spending, as I understand it, we could be spending a lot of money to have a couple of whatever the number is of individuals ended up being trained and ending up in elementary, right? And that's one of the exposures we have. There's no guarantee that they're going to be here, but I think they are. Just something that will really put the line for me, so I understand at least what the sequence is and the funding's out. Because we still, we've indicated, I think the board has indicated unanimously that we're supportive of it, but we really haven't voted on it, as I recall.
Correct.
And we need something that, really can nail down the cost and all that type of thing. And I assume that we'd have to do that next meeting.
Yeah, so the max cost would be 16,000 per person. As far as the other pieces that you're asking for, and I appreciate the questions. Not to throw out the names of the individuals because I don't want to include that in the decision, but it's my understanding the two individuals that kind of made it through the process are indeed local and are very involved in the program and very active members.
Sure.
President Burke, I mean, I think what I need to understand though is if there is that much urgency, like you said, next week to give names. Correct. Because I think a lot of your questions, President Burke, JD and I were going to try to answer after our next one for committee meeting and then show the board that and hopefully give you a lot of these answers.
Yeah, I repeat, I'm not asking, because I'm opposed to it, I just would like to have a clear understanding of what we're doing, that's all. I have another question. When they complete the training on certified and all that, are they going to be Cal Fire's employees?
They would need to be operated as a paid full-time employee within the district.
For who?
For Coastside Fire Protection District, but they wouldn't be an employee of Cal
Let
Fire.
me just bring up another subject. We cannot have employees because it triggers Cal PERS.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I mean is, to operate within the district.
I don't care what, to operate any place, whether it be Cal Fire employees.
Correct.
They will, not Coastside.
No.
Okay, that's fine. Because otherwise it would be.
But the idea would be to obviously place them here.
Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah. It'd be there.
So they would be the same as all people who are here right
The engineer paramedic responded in 40 today.
Okay.
We're trying to build from the local pool to hire people. Is the point.
Very simple.
Is there a financial commitment coming up this next week or just names? I mean, where are we?
Just names.
So if we move forward with what my initial plan was, give the names, I mean, the board's supportive, right? I mean, we just have to have some details.
Yeah.
And then the board is, so if by February's meeting, we would vote potentially on it, or we would vote on it. After the second committee meeting to discuss the details, get that worked out. So President Burke, if JB and myself, in the next committee meeting, get the details together and then the next board meeting present, and then we can make a vote on moving forward.
Yeah, but it brings up another point, excuse me, one second. I hadn't thought of this before, Patrick, but you're being a volunteer, you probably would not be able to vote on this. And is that correct, Jean, or does she have a conflict of interest on that issue?
If you are an acting volunteer,
I am an
Is that-
acting
What? Just, if you, what did you say?
An active volunteer.
and I'm going to have to follow up on that one. It depends on if there's any compensation paid to you as a volunteer. And so I'm happy to answer that question. I just need a little additional information before I can answer it.
Patrick, I just don't want us to do the thought afterwards, but all right.
So
So
feel free to follow up if you want.
if I understood you correctly, Gene, reimbursement for meals is not compensation. Is that an accurate understanding on my part?
That's correct.
So the volunteers currently receive a small stipend on a per call basis. So that that does not count as compensation. So,
Well, I think I need to follow up on this one because a stipend might be viewed differently than reimbursement for a particular meal. So please let me follow up offline on that if I might, and then get back to you. Thank you.
That's fine. I just like to have those details taken care of before we go forward and maybe what I request is kind of an update on it includes these kind of questions.
Yeah, and if, sorry, not to jump ahead, but to get back to Mr. Hannah's question, if externally, if I can go ahead and submit names, knowing that we could always back out, hoping that we don't, but knowing that we could back out, I just need to have names into the program. We can continue to work through our internal kind of questions of it and so forth. And kind of get a little more of that fine tuned, what a stipend might look like or what a reimbursement might look like. And also in that time, if we're halfway to approval, then I could probably have these two individuals have that conversation with Nova and find out what level of assistance they might both be getting. And that might also help aid in the conversation. Sure, to February.
Well, to my fellow board members, I mean, is it fair to say that I think we're, no pun intended, all on board with this, but I just gotta work out the details and the specifics, so moving forward, where Armstrong's gonna make sense to me.
okay,
Yeah, but I don't think personally, I don't think the money is the issue. It's just some of the other, logistics a little bit.
now I understand details being worked out because if you're a paramedic, that by definition is operational, it's not, it's not us. And so my question would be, what details are left for the board to work out? I could see you folks have some details to work out. But other than approving some sort of a daily stipend so they can eat, what else could the board do?
There may only be a few things that might be one of the main ones.
Right,
So
right.
I've said it before at other meetings about this. I want to see a contract with the individuals that they would put in a couple of years after they graduate, before they would, if they plan to move on. And also in the contract that they would pay back if they quit halfway through. Or if they get a job someplace and leave, pay us back.
Director McKinney, I was under the impression you answered that, but we weren't able to do that, Gene, or I don't know what the legalities of that.
You are able to request that they make payback if they don't stay for a particular period of time, but you cannot require that someone remain as your employee for any particular period of time. So there is a way to get at what Board Member McKimmy's asking, but it would be through a requirement that repayment be made if they don't remain for X number of months, years, etc.
In a similar situation, not in public business, but requiring people to stay and we couldn't do it for reasons.
Sure.
We were going to recover some money. Agreed on that, but then months later, the board rescinded that, did not take back. So even though you had an initial contract, at some point down the road, the board changed their mind again. So it was almost 2 foots to have that kind of a. But I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying there's ways around it as well. Good conversation.
For the sake of this meeting, it still makes sense then for me, myself and JB to follow up with Gene on some of these questions that Jimmy has, and then the other ideas, and then we will put this together and present it next meeting.
Which is following up on what President Burke was saying, the industry that I'm most familiar with, training contracts are common. And if you leave within 2 years, whatever the number they come up with, it could be like upwards of $30,000 that you owe your employer.
Right, but they're not currently an employee. They're volunteer.
That's correct.
And or they may not be.
No, I checked.
Yeah, so there's,
Well, obviously, we can't have indentured servants here.
right. So I think we can work this out. Okay, and present it.
Hey, this is kind of a wild question. We have speaking of contracts, we have a contract with the outstanding job that's being done by Cal Fire. That contract says that we're going to have a paramedic on the engines, ALS, and all that. Cal Fire and everybody is having a problem getting paramedics trained. The solution, at least locally, is being looked at to us to provide it. What can Cal Fire put into the pot help us financially or elsewhere?
So unfortunately, financially, there's not I would say not a whole lot, but really there's nothing that CAL FIRE can do as a state entity. Because CAL FIRE on its state mission does not provide paramedic service. We only provide paramedic service to cooperative agreements like Coastside Fire, San Mateo County, and so forth. And so I don't really know how better, to put it, except that.
Well, you know, the state of California had a $90 billion surplus last year. And is using it in a variety of ways. I mean, it just strikes me that, you know, the shortage of the paramedics in the state of California, they it's at least a role for the state and its organization to play in the shortage. That's just a statement. I'm not asking for an answer. If there is one, I'd love to hear it. You know, a letter to the governor or something like that might be appropriate. But we're bearing the cost of it. And as I say, it isn't the money that's the issue, not for me at least. You know. Cindy.
Are graduates of this program guaranteed a position with the Coastside Fire Protection District if they graduate successfully? Or an offer or a position?
As long as, so I can't say guaranteed, because that would give you a lot of trouble. As long as they complete the program, they become certified, they apply with CAL FIRE as a fire apparatus engineer paramedic within this unit. Unless something drastic changes and the paramedic candidate pool quadruples in the next year and we're turning people away, then they would stand a very good chance of competing very well in a fair and equitable hiring process.
You're gonna run for office?
Yeah, well, no, it's great.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions? This is a non-action item, so we'll just go on. All right. Continue on new business to starting new business. A resolution finding the meeting of the board of directors via teleconference and protect against ongoing imminent health and safety risks. And as a motion to approve resolution 2023-01. This is being done each month. I think you're all familiar with it. At this point, it's boilerplate. I'll make a motion to approve 2023-01.
Second.
Any discussion or question?
With the new year, is there any update to this changing, or is it still?
You will be doing it, you will be adopting this month and next month, and at the end of that, as you discussed at your last board meeting, the authorization to operate under this code section goes away because the declaration of emergency will expire, and you've determined you wish to continue in a hybrid format, allowing the public to participate by Zoom, but the board, unless you have just cause or an excuse, will need to be there in person, beginning March 1st.
Any further questions? Okay. Roll call, please, Gene.
Director Cockrell.
Yes.
Director Hannah.
Yes.
Director McKinney.
Yes.
Director Sherrill.
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item B, review and discuss CAL FIRE contract chief cost. And let me just preface this by saying this is strictly an informational item. This contract was passed, the current contract was passed 2 years ago. And I mean, we've had a couple of board members who were not here at that time. So this is strictly an update, informational item, no vote. You comments?
Thanks, yeah, and just put a summary in the staff report for how the CAL FIRE contract works. And it's a lot to ingest. It's a very detailed contract, and I fully expect if there's one-on-one questions you have about technicalities in CAL FIRE, that I can answer those offline as well. Just the way that it works format-wise, the operating plan is kind of the section E, is what they used to call it, of the contract. And it's just kind of saying what's the scope of work, what's the deliverables to the active district. But the current contract is another 7 years, and this has a lot of information about what CAL FIRE provides, what the contract is and what the contract is in for the district, and happy to keep an ongoing conversation to answer whatever questions they have about it.
Thank you. In order to discuss this at the board level going forward, do we need to continue to put it on the agenda, or is it something we'll just discuss one-on-one?
That's completely up to you.
What was the question? I'm not sure.
The question is, in order to, thank you, Chief Cox, for giving us the report and for giving us the opportunity to talk with you about questions we might have, because we are new to this. But if we want if there are questions we'd like to bring back to the board, do we have to have an agenda item in order to ask those questions here in the future?
Let me try to answer. We'll put it on the agenda. Yes, if you have a question, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was a question.
Were there any questions we can answer right now? Or,
No, sir.
okay. Because we're happy to.
Yeah, no, but if there's, we can put anything on it. We choose to do it.
I mean, if I may, and I think Director Cheryl and myself, being the newest members, this initiative, when I call it that, was just to learn about
Yes.
every aspect of our position, being the contract counterpart. And this, so it's really an informational learning environment that would be best probably suited for the two of us to understand detail and many questions answered and whatnot. So I guess moving forward, yeah, we can keep it on the agenda. I also want to say that the previous 3 weeks for a lot of people in this room been quite busy, so there hasn't been as much homework done on my part in regards to this meeting. I speak for Cheryl, but possibly the same. So just moving forward, it's something we just want to better understand. If it's offline, is fine as well. If not, in the board setting.
President Burke, if I could just real quick, the privilege. 90 pages is a ton. Yeah, I saw the staff report. I didn't know it was going to be the full contract and operating report or operating plan in there. As you muddle through the first 25, 30 pages of it, it's a lot of boilerplate. It's California Department of General Service said that like we're bound to for contracts and so forth. So there's a whole lot of rigidness in that actual contract and not a whole lot of performance measures and so forth. And I think it doesn't allow for that, except for including that operating plan. And that operating plan that Chief Cox put together is phenomenal. And it far exceeds anything with that boilerplate contract could ever make sure that we're doing this and that and so forth, like those mid-year kind of benchmarks that we're trying to hit. So like I say, we're obviously happy to answer any questions at any time, but that operating plan is really what I kind of consider meat and potatoes of what's driving the district, not so much their contract. Contract is a formality for payment of services that we're happy to provide.
I think when we first brought this up, we discussed the possibility of an ad hoc committee for us to understand it better. Is that an appropriate way of doing it, or is it just a meeting we had with the chiefs and myself and or Cynthia?
I'd consider anything, but let me just carry on the point here. The ability to change that contract, I think, is 0 and none. I mean, we can amend it, and we have done that and added people to it and all that type of thing. But to amend it in any meaningful way, other than being able to add people or change the operating plan, which we've done, as you probably know, many times. But the basic context of this contract to change, I think, is, it's just not going to happen. In fact, at some point in time, when we first started this contract, some board members went to Sacramento and met with Cal Fire to see what leverage we have, and the answer was 0. And I think, is that fair? That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and President Burke, just to reiterate what we said previously, me, myself, and Director Cheryl, is purely like informational.
Yeah, but maybe I don't understand, what part of the contract would you want to have a committee on?
What part?
Yeah, or what, if you had a committee on the contract, what would be the goal? What were we trying to do?
One example of something that I know very little about is how the budget of Coastside Fire is operated and ran by the contractor Cal Fire. So
The answer very simply is we had part of being able to get a contract with Cal Fire is we had to be financially viable. And that's why you see it in the contract. That was the only provision of our interest in it. Because, and let me back up. When we first got the contract,
we had to borrow $1.5 million from CAL FIRE because we didn't have enough money. To pay for CAL FIRE. We literally borrowed $1.5 million from them. But part of their contract procedure was to ensure that anybody they signed up with was financially viable, and that's why you see it in here. That's the only reason.
See, I don't understand your answer. Comment.
The only reason that the contract with this contract was predicated on the fact that they were going to be entering a contract with somebody who could pay them.
Right.
And that is why you see in the contract a copy of our finances at 2020. That's the only reason.
Again, giving an example of something I want to learn more about is the budget of Coastside Fire.
Oh,
And how it's
terrific. Yeah.
operated.
Yeah.
But it's put together and operated by the contract with CAL FIRE. And so as I understand it, there's gonna be a lot of questions. That's one example. Again, it has nothing to do with. how
Okay,
it's operated.
maybe it's one of the different subject. One of the things that you and the board asked for was a meeting on the budget and finances. That will be scheduled, completely separate from this.
Sure.
And I don't know whether we're gonna be, with it's next month or whatever, but it'll be completely separate and we'll have opportunity to go over the finances and the budget as a separate item as a board. Okay, for whatever time it takes. Okay.
Sounds excellent. And again, I think it was Director Cheryl and at the time Director Stockman that presented something, and I believe it was about finding the best way for the board and the contractor to both move forward and improve whatever, you know, and understanding what could be possible in.
Well, I don't
There's a
think
deliverable or
Yeah.
future, what strategic planning, I mean, these are all.
Yeah, look, this, as far as I'm concerned, this CAL FIRE contract and discussion that we had today and the upcoming financial one are just information. They are not tied to a strategic plan. If it's separately, you or any board member would like to bring forward things to put in a strategic plan, God bless you. I hope you do, because I do, and other people do. I'd love to see that happen. But they're not tied to this document or to the upcoming financial review. Okay, all right.
Well, you first. Maybe you might suggest something. I don't know about that. Just three things I want to point out. One is this 7-year contract, the operating plan was built with a committee, which was Director Stockman and Director McKinney in committee meeting. And over the course of probably 6 months, what do we want the next 7 years of this to look like? So for backstory, how did we get to this? It was through committee, it was through discussion, and that's how this came about. Now, probably the two most important things, and my second bullet point is the last page, is the breakdown of all the positions that the contract pays for or authorizes CAL FIRE to use in the district. So this is like the single most important page because CAL FIRE provides for personnel. And this is really the cheat sheet that says 6 fire captains, 6 fire captain paramedics, all the way down throughout. So that when you're looking through all of this, the operating plan, the authorized positions are the two most important pieces of the entire thing. Then I think the third bullet point is just kind of putting this into context into the district. And you know, the district every year we get told by the county what our kind of authorized limit of tax money is going to be for the year. And then what staff does is we work on looking at what our fixed costs are, our CalPERS liabilities, all our different contracts and whatnot. And one line in the budget is this contract. We're essentially just another vendor to the district.
Professional services.
Yeah, professional services, you know, $11 million for the year. And then all of the money that gets spent through this district comes to all of, or at least 2 of you before it gets expended. So that's kind of how it works in context, in the sense that we literally, if you think about kind of a framework of it, we're just another vendor in that big spreadsheet of expenses you have every month. But we just happen to be the staffing who execute the operating plan with the best way I can.
That's a good explanation. Thank you.
The only thing additionally I'd like to offer up is if, Director Cheryl and Director Hannah, if you guys wanted, I'll set a time so you guys don't get sucked into too much time with me. But if we want to meet for like just an hour informally before the next meeting, I could bore you for ages on kind of the ins and outs of the state contracting process, and maybe tell you kind of our perspectives, what the positives are to the board, and answer whatever questions you guys might have, if that would be helpful.
It's an excellent offer.
That sounds wonderful.
Thank you up on that.
Okay, again, for me, it's about understanding the ins and outs, so that I can really better provide, do, the best job I can in the role that I have.
The way it was explained to me when we first entered into this agreement with Cal Fire was the assumption was that every single person here is at the top step. And that's what's basing our monthly fee on. Now, in reality, not everyone is top step, so that's essentially we get the discount, but it's after the fact. And so frequently the amount of money that we've agreed to pay, it ends up coming in at less than that.
Well, there's the contract amount, like I said, the staffing individuals, right? So
The contract amount is the top step. That's
Right.
but
They bill actual.
of that is the remainder of the budget.
So I understand that. How much flexibility is there in then saying the board or the district saying how the float will be spent? So if you have extra left over because everyone's not in top step, how much flexibility might there be to allocating those funds to whatever the board?
100%.
100%, yeah.
But it's not us, because we only bill for actuals. So we don't take the extra money. The district has never spent it. So what tends to happen is a $10 million contract, you only end up actually paying about $8 million a year. So that those $2 million of extra
Yes.
essentially just get rolled up.
It never leaves late.
Yeah, it essentially
never
gets
leaves your bank.
reinvested the next year.
So for example, the vegetative action plan last year, we made some adjustments to that plan. And the total cost of those adjustments were an additional 600,000 and 614,000. And that was available. We could do that. We could say it's important and a priority of the district to allocate additional funding to vegetative mitigation, basically, of seasonal and heavy fuels. So did that money come from the $2 million difference? Is that why it was available?
So, no, let me put it in context. So every year, we get a set amount from the county that says, hey, you have, for general purposes, let's say $10 million that you can expend as a district. That's what your secured and unsecured is going to be. We end up building a spreadsheet that shows all of our expenses for the year, which includes the CAL FIRE contract. And we break it down. Let's say let's say $9 million is what our total expenses are. We say we're going to put $1 million into reserves, and then we start the year. Well, by the end of that year, we end up only spending $7 million because the CAL FIRE contract came in under.
Right.
That money that we didn't spend, then we make a decision at that point whether we put it into savings or whether it's going to be used for some special purpose. So it doesn't. Although it's budgeted, it doesn't go unprepared. That's what I described.
Yeah, let me just say that, first of all, this discussion is the one that I'd like to see us have on meeting on finances. Would be the appropriate place to do that. But the short answer to any fund balance that's here from CAL FIRE, or we didn't spend anything else, what we do with that is this 5-member board here decides what we're going to do. Whether we're going to build a new 44, what we're going to do in invention management, that's a vote of the board that decides how we're going to do that, period. Okay. All right, no, this is another informational item, no vote taken on it. You know, when this subject came up, if there's no more question, I want to make just a comment. Being around a little bit, when I think about the CAL FIRE contract and what we're talking about today, and think of the situation this organization was in prior to the CAL FIRE contract, the changes are simply amazing. We sat, a board sat here in this room in 2007 prior to the contract with here. We had received a grand jury report that was just absolutely stifling. It was just outlined everything that you can imagine that was wrong with this fire district going into it. We had no money. We were borrowing money from the county to pay our existing firefighters at that period of time. Didn't even have any money to do it. And as I mentioned earlier, when we went to Cal Fire, we had to borrow money for them. At that time, things were so bad, we hired a contractor, a former fire chief, highly regarded, and said, you know, what do we do? And after a period of time, he wrote a report and met with us and said, look, if you want to get this organization to be really a first-class fire department, he says it'll take you 10 to 12 years if you continue doing it the way you're doing it. He says the only other thing to do, he says, you've got to wipe the slate clean and you've got to start all over again. That basically, which is what led us to the contract with Cal Fire. And I was like, I won't bore you with any more of that, but the differences of what was being discussed here 10, 12 years ago at a board meeting versus what we're discussing today are like night and day. And I mean, literally, we have a first-class organization that's highly respected with great staff and management. And we're very, very fortunate to do it. Now, having said that, I certainly don't mean we cannot improve. They do not walk on water. We can change it, but we have the latitude to do that. Enough of my sermon.
One of the things that, I guess the analogy is that Cal Fire is a large organization and they do a lot of things. So as a result, we use the quote unquote cafeteria approach. And so we approach the cafeteria and say, well, we have one of those, and we'll take 2 of those, and maybe just we don't need that. Well, how about 7 of those? And so that's what we have. And if you look at this this page that he referred to, we talked to all these people.
Yeah.
Now we might choose at some future time, and I'll tell you where I'm coming from, to increase staffing. And that's something we would approach Cal Fire and say, hey, put in your cafeteria hat, we want one more of these. And then it would show up here as an additional, or 2 additional, or 4 additional. Does that make any sense? Okay, all right.
Okay, moving on. We'll have an opportunity to discuss the finances. Item C, under new business, consider approval of resolution declaring seasonal weeds of public nuisance. And I'll preface this, I will make a motion to adopt resolution number 223-02. Do I have a second?
Second.
Chief Cox, any comments or?
No, this is straightforward. The list of the properties which will be in the weed abatement as opposed to the vegetation abatement are found in the package, and this will follow our normal process.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell,
Yes.
Director Hannah.
Yes.
Director McKinney,
Yes.
Director Cheryl. President Burke. Motion passes 5-0.
Business item D, consider approval of resolution authorizing receipt of 2022 mandatory fire inspections. Chief Cox.
Thank you. This is required by state law. After the Ghost Ship fire, we now have to report all of the mandatory fire inspections. Chief Griffin and his staff conduct and keep the record of all the inspections in the district, which includes the mandatory inspections, and this is required by law to be received by resolution by the board.
Do I have a motion to adopt resolution 2023-03?
So moved.
I'll second. Discussion. Questions, discussion. Roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell,
Yes.
Director Hannah,
Yes.
Director McKinney,
Yes.
Director Cheryl,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to directors and chief reports of finance committee. We did not have a finance committee meeting. However, the monthly statement of all the money and where it is in terms of our budget is in our packet. It is obviously a public document. I just point out a couple things and see if anybody has any questions. But after the first 6 months of the year, our total revenue is 56%.
On ERAF, we've only received one payment to date. I'm hopeful that we'll receive a second payment through the county, but as we've talked in other meetings, that's become somewhat of a political issue at this time, but at least we've received that. We have not made any CAL FIRE payments year to date. The way their billing system works, we'll get them in the last 6 months of this year. So that's why our expenses are, I think I noted it's something like 17% or some percent. We made no CAL FIRE payments. Our reserves are still healthy again, 13 million in Lake and $2 million in San Mateo County. The bulk of that is being reserved to look for whatever we're going to do with Station 44. Hopefully we'll have some resolution on that. Ours balance, and there's a statements in the packet on 2 monthly balances, but in the total fund is $3.6 million, which is a healthy balance at this point. I do notice, Chief, that the Haas man, I think Andrew Brown, has noted and asked again to present to the board. And I think probably we ought to do it. It's been well over a year to do that. I don't know that any light bulb is going to go off, but if there's some convenient time, it does not have to be next month. But I think to be prudent, we should have him on. He gave us great advice, by the way, here a few months ago when he suggested us move our asset allocation back to 50-50 in equities versus stock. So probably getting an idea of what he thinks of the future of the market investment might be helpful. So at some point in time, we can put that on. I do have, and I don't know who gets copies of what sometimes, but Haas, as an organization, was audited just like any financial audit. And I don't know whether the chief or who gets them, but I have copies of their most recent audit. Bottom line is they're in great shape from an audit point of view. But if any member of the public or board, if you have not seen this and would like to see it, have a copy, I'm going to leave it with the chief if you'd like to get copies of that. With that, that's any financial comments.
President Burke, how often, maybe it's not a consistent thing, how often is the finance committee meets?
Depending on what it is, the next time we would meet probably would be having to do with preparing for the next year's budget, unless there's something that comes up that's really unusual. I mean, most of it is pretty low for the group. Once we get the budget down and it's in here, and then based with our purchasing policy, the chief and management has the authority to do whatever they want to do. So to answer your question, I really don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times a year at most, but not on a regular schedule.
Are those meetings kind of used generally to prepare the budget and look over the overall budget?
Typically, typically would be, yeah. I can't think of one. You know, I don't know if we had a meeting on it, for example, last year that we had fund balance left over, and the recommendation was that we advance the purchase of 2 engines and then did the money on that. Those are the kind of issues that we'll be dealing with. Okay.
This affords us to pay cash and save all the finance charges that I would just accept it come up with.
Good question. Let's see, where are we? Volunteer committee report, Director Crosswell, Director Hannah.
If I may, yeah, so we discussed a few different things that are current, and we already discussed the paramedic program, so I'll start with that. Same thing we discussed earlier in this meeting, just figuring out some of the details, looking into the possibility of the language on how we having an opening within Coastside for that individual, looking into how it would be housed and reimbursed for expenses, as well as the possibility of looking into them working as a paramedic volunteer as well. I believe that Chief Cox is looking at this somewhat. I think it's an ongoing discussion. Also, the volunteer handbook was reviewed, looking at either amending or adjusting the role of a support position or removing it. But we're looking at different ways to make that function. I think at this point there is singular support individual, defining that specifically. Again, another decision that was made by the committee at that time. But that's one of the topics. Simple things, making sure that moving forward, each volunteer has the right equipment. Straightforward, but there's, some missing pieces in the handbook. So we're putting the pieces together, making sure everyone has a radio, not just a pager, rain jackets, that kind of stuff. Simple stuff. Again, I think with the volunteer committee's report next month, it should all be buttoned down.
I thought it was pretty much in the volunteer report that we had.
The handbook currently,
Yes.
there's just specifics. Talking about equipment, there's some things that are not in there that we should add. Okay, just so it's, again, button down. And I know that you had written down some of the numbers that we had given at the last meeting, the volunteer meeting from the previous weather-related incidents, quite large weather-related incidents we had. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, unfortunately, but I don't know. I can have the numbers, but
I had
hundreds of hours by about, I think, 10 individuals from our strong force of volunteers, multiple days, some shifts lasting up to 18 hours. I mean, 30, 40, 50, 60 calls handled by these individuals.
the volunteers in back staff an engine, partially staffed 640, which is a mini engine, plus the utility, which is the pickup truck. So that's sounds to me like there was a time they came through. This was it.
Yeah, and it's really highlights the true benefit of having an organization like this that's part of Coastside Fire, to have Coastside Fire volunteers. And as far as ROI, I think if anyone would like that on the board, I'm happy to put together some numbers, but we're talking about a lot of volunteer effort put into what would have cost, a fair amount of money, just even for like 1 week of major storms. That's, so looking at, putting money into different things with the volunteers, it's a good way to balance.
I've got a question for either one of you two. Within San Mateo County, how many departments have professional staffing, which we're fully staffed professionals, and in addition have a volunteer piece?
So there's 5 volunteer companies in the county.
Okay,
Us, Lomar, La Honda, Kings Mountain, and Colma.
okay.
Colma, I believe, is still all volunteer. I think we're the only combination. They made a combination.
They're kind of combo because they're paying like a day person, and then the rest is still.
Yeah. So we're probably, probably unique in our setup.
So we're going to be the only department that is fully staffed with professionals, and in addition, we have, okay. Where Kings Mountain, La Honda are volunteer departments by definition. I'm sorry. Thank you. I forgot that. Those three. Thank you.
But at the same time, they're kind of combination in a sense because they also are in that county fire station. Yeah, so they're also kind of combination.
Do they have staff? For example, is there staff at Lomar, full-time staff?
No.
And so La Honda, there's full-time staff there, and the same thing with the team, right? Okay, thank you. So we're it. In terms of having a full-time professional staff and the volunteer adjunct.
And further to wrap up the report and the volunteers, the current academy is ongoing. Believe, correct me, anyone, one or two have not made it past the first week or two, but other than that, it's going very well.
I believe Chief Lord said we started with 17 and lost 2, but it's over 10.
And 17 being the number is a combination of
So
us.
they're not going to 15. But you're not all for here.
could I ask, Chief, but I see I skipped an item on the agenda.
I didn't catch that.
Consider approval update of the paramedic training program for volunteer firefighters. I'd like to ask if that be postponed and have an agenda next month with the handbook, the updated handbook.
So, sorry, I'm a little confused. I think the paramedic program was the,
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. My fault. Wait,
okay,
all right, let me back up and restate it. I'd like to see a subject on the volunteer handbook on the agenda, okay, not the other thing, okay? And to answer your question, as far as, what was the position we had, that you asked about having you?
The support staff.
Suppose that, just a paper, I don't mind having a support staff, it's somebody that does it, as long as that support staff is the Coastside volunteer.
I think, what you just mentioned about making sure the handbook will be on the next agenda.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think
Okay.
we postponed it just because we hadn't deleted every detail. As far as the support staff, I think the concern was identifying it specifically of what that individual can and can't do based on, liability / operational standpoint. So we're going to, moving forward, kind of hash out what that role
Make it
is.
easy on yourself and say the lieutenant level chief.
Well, it seems to me if they are Coastside volunteers, they have to be, it has to be.
Of course, yeah. I would, okay, was gonna call it. All right, anything else? Okay. Land and Structures Committee, Director McKinney.
We look forward, we shortlisted, as you know, 3 firms, and we look forward to their public interviews tomorrow. We have a list of questions that are going to be asked of each firm, and a decision should be made shortly thereafter.
Nicely done.
Yeah, you've already met with some architects, that's good. I'm talking to you.
Tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Interviews are tomorrow.
Oh, not until tomorrow, okay. I thought that was just one.
Public interview.
Was, okay.
Public interviews, right? 3 interviews tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Could I ask you, Chief, assuming that the recommendation comes forward from the committee, what's the rough timeline when we put a shovel on the ground before the board?
that's a good question. We could actually even ask that tomorrow and get a better answer for you.
Okay. All right, fair enough. All right. Next, Vegetation Management, Director Cockrell, Director Hammond.
I don't remember the report. Maybe,
We have yet to have a committee meeting on this, and then I'm newly appointed. I'm still doing research, but I have no comment.
Okay. Special District Association Sanitary Chapter, Director Hammond.
I am also new to this as well, but I can say that I'll be attending a conference which is geared towards an individual like myself who is new to this. So it's step 1 in their program of learning about special districts in our area and what the association teaches, and that creates an environment for individuals from all kinds of districts, also not just fire related. That I will be attending at the end of February. And after that, I'd be more than happy to report on how many things I learned.
And that meeting, Patrick, you'll meet I'm sure the local Bay Area representative for special districts, and I think that will be helpful to you also in terms of what's going on in the district. And along that line, if I may, Patrick mentioned that the leadership conference that he spoke at the beginning on this 26th of February is in India, and there's another identical conference in October in Santa Rosa. And the way they have it structured is that if new board members go, or if you're a returning board member, they have a little bit different conference to attend. And I've said this many times, I just find that it's very helpful that oftentimes it isn't the agenda, it's the people you talk to and exchange ideas that really are the most valuable.
I agree. And what I saw being that it wasn't until October, I will be accomplishing this first one in February, and then maybe attending the one in October as the step 2, right, returning individual, like you said, different different courses or different.
If you're able to get a handle on the number of meetings that the California Special District has, my hat is off to you.
Well, two of the.
And they're good, I don't mock them, they do a good job, they really do, yeah, but they do have a lot of needs. Okay. All right. ALS JPA, the meeting was held last week, I was unable to attend, I looked at the agenda, but basically no change in the ALS JPA. Is that fair?
It was pretty just informational.
Yeah, okay, what did you have? That was, yeah, okay. Emergency preparedness report, Mr. Cockrell. Cosgrove?
Cosgrove.
Please take the podium, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. I'll give you a brief introduction. David Cosgrove, I'm the district coordinator for the Department of Emergency Management, and my districts are the unincorporated county, the city of Half Moon Bay, the Fire Safe Council, and many other projects as assigned. Department of Emergency Management is a split from what used to be the Office of Emergency Services, where it was under the Sheriff's Department. Now we're under the County Executive Office, so we look out for the interests of the county executive. And we coordinate with the 20 cities that are part of the Emergency Service Council and manage that. DM obviously is, and all of you have been very busy this year with the storm mode. So we had the activation of the EOC over in San Mateo County, which we in River City, which we call the Rock. I came over here to the Half Moon Bay Coastside Emergency Operating Center and worked with the city, and all the next report from Director Cheryl about the CERT operation and everything and whatnot, I believe. So I'll leave that for her. But very big effort put on here in Half Moon Bay to support the South Coast, as well as the city and Mid Coast and the city of Half Moon Bay. Obviously, the 31st was the biggest event. So we activated that. We had the county was busy fielding requests for sandbags and other supplies, making help with human services, making contracts with hotels to house people that needed housing. So a very busy time. On the 31st of December, there were 1,026 police calls for that day versus a normal of 483. Fire had 1,177 versus 234. This is countywide, not, you probably have your own stats here. Public Works had 140 calls versus 4. And between December 31st and January 15th, the county has dispatched 552 tree down calls. So it gives you an idea of the ground saturation, the winds, and the damage that's been done by these things. SMC alerts. One of my other projects was training agencies on how to use a new platform that we use. One thing I'll tell you is the old platform went through many iterations, so we recommend everybody to sign up again at smcalert.info because there's more options when you sign into it. If you didn't put a location in before, you won't be included on a geo sign up when we send it out because you're not in that geographic area. So if you, we had complaints from someone in Brisbane that didn't get the Cloverdale Road closure. So it only went to the coastal areas. We didn't think somebody would want it there. So if you want different areas, you have to sign up for multiple locations. During the storms, we sent out 195 messages, which reached 3,051,504 devices during that time. So when I say devices, some people sign up with multiple emails, some people still have pagers and phones. So it went out to that many things. One thing, the biggest mistake that people make is when we send out the text and an email, the header goes into the email, but it doesn't go on the text. I made that mistake once where I sent out a thing with the location in the header, and I sent it out and immediately realized to resend it. So we get complaints when it's very vague, but you're limited to 180 characters on the text, and if you use the Spanish translation, some letters with the not being specific English can take up to 7 characters of the 180. So we have to truncate the Spanish, but the text messages or the email messages come out full. So we assisted with the temporary evacuation point
For the city, also we assisted with that for the people displaced by the shooting on Monday. We're currently working with FEMA, Cal OES, and Small Business Administration to do a survey for the county to try to qualify for federal assistance. They've been out since Monday, inspecting locations. Cities reported the areas where they had great damage, and we put out a survey for the county for individuals to report to it. So they've been trying to follow up on those types of things. The threshold is kind of like, they're looking for major damage, like 18 inches of water in the building technically is where the outlets are supposed to be, some are up, some are down, but 18 inches is kind of like what they, and roof damage doesn't count. It has to, a tree would have to come into the living space. So outbuilding buildings don't count, farms don't count, you know, it's only living space is what they're looking for, and it's severe water damage and structure damage from things or foundation slippage, like with the landslide. So we're trying to qualify enough damage where we can get it to qualify, and then people will turn in their individual requests to do things. RCD is moving hard to try to get some of the logs out in Pescadero. Because I don't know if they know, there's a very large log jam down there from all the debris that's built up over the years of not having the weather. And they're working on that. I'm working with the district here on the tsunami inundation maps. There's a playbook that goes in the background, so I'm working on projects, and the Emergency Service Council meeting is tomorrow, which if you're interested in things that DM is doing and the county's doing, that's tomorrow evening online. So I'm not sure exactly for reporting out what you guys are looking. We can work on a format so I can get the information you need, but I'm here for any questions as well. And thank you for inviting me.
Chief Treasurer, thank you very much for being here. Go ahead, question.
I can only speak for where I live, but at one point, we didn't have internet, we didn't have power. And we didn't have, we didn't have anything.
You weren't alone.
We couldn't, we didn't have cell service, I'm sorry.
Right.
Cell service, internet, and had something bad happen. I don't know what we would have done.
You know, when I was down in Pescadero, really, actually Supervisor Mueller was there, and Senator Becker, Josh Becker was there, and they're well aware of the fragile communication system we have here, where there's no redundancy, and we're both interested in trying to work on redundancy for that project that we've been trying for 20 years. So the county's well aware of it, and trying to get the.
Or we could do without everything else, the cell service, so that was the one that would be nice to have.
Exactly, it affected emergency services, so, and the ability to call 911. I think Director Cheryl might talk about the radio network that CERT set up during that time. It's like a safety net, and we're working on those things as well.
Thank you.
Question?
On that note, of communication services, right? Because a lot of homes in today's world probably don't have landlines, so they're relying on their cell phones. I'm not sure if landlines went down as well.
Yes, it did.
I don't
The cockle sets.
But within your scope of the things you see, I mean, you do a lot of areas that may not be as similar to ours, because we're kind of unique on the coast. Do they have emergency backup cell towers that can be installed? I know that exists, but.
Well, the infrastructure on the bay side is much more robust.
Yeah.
Versus the rural areas. Regulations coming down the coast, coming through the San Francisco watershed is what the contractors say limit them to building those redundancy.
Is that something that we and within fire have looked into as far as communication? We talked earlier about satellite for the vehicles, but kind of comes to probably above our scope as far as emergency related cellular backup systems. But
didn't cows get put in place through DEM on the coast?
We did bring Verizon cellular on wheels is what a cow is. We did put one down at the Pescadero High School because that was the temporary evacuation point, and we wanted to have communications down there. Yes.
And so that operated and functioned, and
That operated, but for the limited area within, you know,
was that
parking lot of the area.
provided by Verizon? Or?
Verizon provided that, yes.
Thank you, Chief.
David.
Okay. I'll try, David. She's a lot easier for me after 4 years. But I think your report is a very humbling report, because having seen firsthand the value that you offer the city and from the county during the 12 storms, as well as the shooting this past Monday, I think the role that you're playing from the county and the resources that you're bringing to bear, combined with your 32 years of knowledge of really understanding the coastside, was just invaluable. And I watched firsthand the city rely upon you. The city did a great job, but this was their first rodeo in the EOC for a real emergency under their new leadership structure. So they had a new city managing director. They had new department heads in critical spaces, and everyone was there doing their best, but you were the one who guided them. And that I watched make all the difference. I think you were offered an office at the end of those 12 days. I don't think you've had a day off since.
It's Christmas.
Yeah. So there you went through all of that, and that sort of stood down last Wednesday, and then Monday was the shooting. You were at IDES. You were helping relocate families from the temporary shelter to hotel rooms. You were helping to guide the city with what the county could do. It has just, and you've been a really voice for compassion and humanity to people who were under extreme stress.
Well, thank you. I was glad I was there to offer. The city did a dynamite job. I was going over to the EOC, which couldn't get to because it was cordoned off, because that's where the first surrendered. And I got the page that the TEP had already been started, and city manager Chester and Dowdy did a great job. Their full staff was there, and I was just to be able to know them and have the resources of the county to be the liaison. I kind of say that the EM is kind of like the concierge. We don't have boots on the ground. We don't have bullets or guns or anything like that, but we just kind of contact people. So I'm glad I can know that well. So.
It was truly invaluable to watch you perform at that level for that long period of time.
And again, thank you for inviting me here, whatever format you want me to answer questions, get information in advance. So,
Thank you, Chief.
thank you.
Also, your webinar yesterday, it was 3 hours long, but he was brilliant, and his value that help me remember his name, Dan Norman.
Sean Norman, the business chief. Beautiful.
Sean Norman, his guidance from his experience for what we could look forward to here on the coastside is directly applicable to what we need to think about here.
Yeah, well, thank you. That was part of the planning that we're doing for our countywide evacuation plan, to get people to think about different things. And he brought up many topics that are going to help us with that plan.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have my hand up. Can I ask him a question?
Yes, you may.
Okay, can you hear me? Oh, good. Hi, Dave. Listen, I thought that was a fantastic evacuation seminar yesterday, and I'm just wondering if there's a coastside plan yet or in the works for evacuations. I mean, we've had some bad storms, some highway diversions, and of course the shooting. It would be helpful to know that, you know, if something really, really bad comes up, that we'll be able to get out of here. Anything in the works on that yet?
The countywide plan is what they're working on at the county level. Granada has a plan for the Highlands that's been out before. But kind of like what Chief Norman said yesterday, just imagine yourself at the end of a ball game with 60,000 people, or on the coast, 25,000 people are leading an event at one time. Even when it's a planned event and you've got police in place and all the roads diverted, you sit in that parking lot for a very large amount of time. So it all comes down to personal preparedness, situational awareness, and leaving early.
Well, I did get that, and you know, leaving early has already been on my checklist for a long time. And also, one thing regarding SMC alert, yeah, sometimes there's a vague text, like Monday, when they just said police activity, avoid 92, but they didn't say possible murder suspect at large or anything like that. And they also never gave us a follow-up when it was over. So is there any way you can kind of train your people to, be a little more specific and help people really avoid areas that are dangerous and that sort of thing?
Yeah, we had a couple people complain about that one, and they take the report and talk to the person that put it out. So yeah, all the improvement plans are in place.
And so on the evacuation plan, the Coastside Fire, your EOC is not being involved in the planning?
The individual planning is up to fire and law, and we can facilitate that.
So you said the county, so I wasn't sure what you meant because I thought you were with the county now, so.
There's a county coordination plan trying to coordinate, kind of like they talked about with you not being, in on the plan. So that they don't have Belmont work on a plan and San Carlos work on a plan. The county is working on trying to coordinate any plans that the locals come up with. And
So
give them, the ones that don't have to give them a template for building it.
in other words, like if everybody from the mid coast goes north to avoid some event that's happening in the south, we'll all end up dumping out into Pacifica, but they might not know we're on our way. Is that kind of a plan, right? You guys have that in the works, maybe?
That's in the works. That's already in the plan for our with Zone Haven with our evacuation.
Okay, good. Well, I was just going to say that guy, Sean Norman, he would be good to help look over the plan and see if there's going to be, he seems like he has so much experience that he could troubleshoot a plan to see if they overlook something like that. I've just noticed when I go through Devil's Slide lately, those trees on the roadsides, there's branches down, there's all kinds of debris and stuff, and nobody could get through there if they had to, if it was on fire. But
You said Chief Cosgrave is on overtime.
in other words, not my yacht, man. Bye.
Good. Third report, Director Carroll, please.
Thank you. CERTs were busy. CERTs swung into action on the 31st. The whole series of 12 events, storms, closed out with the EOC was closed out by the city last Wednesday. And then we alerted again at the shooting on Monday, but our position on that was interesting. I'll come back to that. Not really involved in that one. More than 200 people from Coastside CERT were active during the storm program. There were radio nets in many of the neighborhoods, not all 32, but many, and they were critical nets in the areas that, as you were explaining, JB, lost everything. So there was a period of time for Montera, Clipper Ridge, parts of El Granada, some parts of Moss Beach, Seal Cove, where the FRS radios that were communicating to the ham networks, who were communicating to the EOC, were the only means of communication that those residents had. And Montera had a particularly good network going on. Those networks are challenged by the topography of the area, and that's where the ham radio really comes into play. We were thrilled that Coastside CERT, as well as the Half Moon Bay Amateur Radio Emergency Services, ARES, was invited to join the EOC this event. This was the first time in anybody's memory that CERTs were involved, and it was the radio operators haven't been there for 4 years. So I think this time they really proved their worth. The city's extended an invitation for both organizations to return whenever the EOC is activated, and it applies to the services we provide. So that was the radio operators responded to a request to stand up, open that ham radio station at the EOC within 30 minutes. And they operated continuously for a couple of days and then did regular radio checks throughout the coastside for, especially for areas that still did not have service for days and days afterwards, on regular hourly, 2 hourly, 4 hourly intervals as the incidents began to wind down. We had 4 requests from the city to send for serve volunteers at the Sandbag Station up here on Higgins Canyon, the Oak Avenue apartments, which flooded on that first storm when Cedars Creek backed up due to a fog. As the water was headed right to the ocean, there was a problem because there was so much collected debris in that waterway. There hadn't been that much water there for so long. It bottlenecked, it backed up, it flooded Oak Park and Pillar Cedars Park. It flooded, just about flooded out the water station there. But that water station, there's so much pressure built up that clog burst through at a good time for the water station anyway, and the pumping station, and the water went to the sea. It never again, despite the whole series of storms, got that high again. It never came back to flood, but that first line of houses across from Oak Park on Oak Avenue did flood out and were deemed uninhabitable. So we were asked to come up with that. The EOC, like I said, we stood up, we did that work, we worked. That was a great learning experience because we got to see the work that city, the county, the public works from both of those organizations, the fire, congratulations, amazing fire services during that time, the number of calls in the worst of weather that were fielded. And the volunteers were just gold. They just stood up and went out there and their training was invaluable. It is what you say, they are trained the same. And the residents were so appreciative of fire services, both the paid and the volunteers. We are incredibly fortunate to have this organization serving the community. In addition to the 200 or so people who were involved in volunteering in these various activities, Coastside CERT also donated $5,910.30 worth of emergency equipment, blankets, flashlights, etc., to residents who were flooded out, mostly in Blue Ridge and in Oak Park, but others as well. And these supplies were distributed by us, who are trusted contacts in those neighborhoods. This equipment came to us through the FSDI grant in 2021. So we were very pleased to have that in reserve for the community when it was needed. We did, well, let me just end there. It's been a long meeting. Suffice it to say, we were very pleased to see CERTs do their job. Some people said, oh gosh, why didn't we see a lot of green vests running around doing things? And the answer is because CERTs were doing just what they were trying to do. Their job in an emergency like that is to stay in the neighborhood. If they're safe and their family's safe, to go out and take care of their neighborhoods, to organize periodic patrols of the neighborhood when it's safe to do so, to report in the whole neighborhood FRS and ham radio networks. They did that and they stayed off Highway 1. That's a very important part of their training, that in an emergency situation, Highway 1 is to be reserved for first responders and for utility crews and public works groups. And that's what happened. There are 2 remarkable statistics to me that came out of this whole thing besides the number of trees that fell. One is that not one person was seriously injured in our territory from south of the tunnels to Nevis Creek. There were serious injuries elsewhere, but we were so grateful for that outcome. And secondly, there were no car accidents for a week, which is unheard of here in this region. And it's basically because people sheltered in places they were instructed to do during the time that the storms were there. So,
Cynthia, thank you. And I'm sure I speak for the whole board and please convey to all members of CERT our appreciation for the outstanding job that you did during the emergency and continue to do. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Attorney's report, Gene,
Nothing. Thank you very much.
Fire marshal report.
Yes, I'll be brief. For stats for the month of December, we conducted 81 plan reviews. That's even with the holidays. So business is not slowing down. Other than that, our fire marshal's office assisted with the storms as well, specifically. Tyler here was out patrolling the coast of 16 out here with his knowledge of the area, having been on the engine out here was really beneficial, and it's nice for them to step up and assist. And other than that, we are moving forward with filling the position behind me, so we're full staffed out here on the coast in the fire marshal's office. And we're moving forward.
Thank you, Doug.
Ready to report.
Very good. Thank you. Fire chief report. Who's going to begin? Chief Cost.
You told, yeah.
There you go.
Just a few things. One, continue to meet with the city manager, and Sheriff Alvin, developing a good relationship there and, bring all of our interests together. We had a fire chiefs planning retreat last week with all of the fire chiefs in the county. We go out of the county for a few days to work on kind of strategic priorities of the fire service in general in the county. Successful, some big, fairly big media projects that we're trying to endeavor in as a county. On the personnel side, we're in the process of hiring some additional fire apparatus engineers. That's for this district, the entry level position. The non-paramedic rank is easy to fill, relatively. The paramedic rank is still difficult. As Chief Griffin said, we have a vacancy behind him now that we're filling. And we're happy to have our paramedic supervisor back chief for this proceeding future. On the operations side, I was telling my wife about this yesterday. I said, man, it's been a long 12 weeks since New Year's. It's felt like a long time. But the best way to describe it is we had the 22 days of the storms and the flooding event. During that time, the district and CAL FIRE and County Fire had the regular staffing, plus we upstaffed the Type 6 engine in this district and the Type 3 in the County Fire program. In addition, we had a representative and a chief officer here in the DOC as well as a captain in the DOC. Additionally, we had someone at the Coastside EOC fire staff. Additionally, we had a chief officer in the county EOC as well. So we were fairly stretched on the CAL FIRE side. Hats off to the volunteer program. They did a great job as always, stepping up and helping out. After that, we quickly transitioned into the significant vehicle over the side, south of Devil's Slide that I'm sure everyone read about. Amazing job by everyone who's involved with that, just getting down, getting the patient contact and extricated in an expeditious manner. We've had quite a few ocean rescues. We had 2 ocean rescues over the weekend that were both successful. No fatalities involved. And then unfortunately, probably the most prominent right now is just the mass shooting we had on Monday. We obviously had 2 locations that we responded to, San Mateo Road being the first, and the South Cabrillo Concord Farms location being the second. Our medics treated or interacted with all the patients, so it was a heavy load for our crews. Luckily, we had a truck over here training from the Bayside, just happened to be training here that day, so we had an extra resource on the coast. But we also had a level 1 MCI initiated. We went to a level 2 MCI. If you came by, there was 6 ambulances, 4 engines, a truck, AMR supervisor, 2 helicopters, and then 4 chief officers who were over here. Gary, our division chief over here, who's not here tonight, he is also a law enforcement officer, as you know, and he quickly transitioned to law enforcement, was one of the officers who was quick to back up the sheriff's department with their arrest of the suspect. So it was nice to have that law enforcement officer here looking out for our crews as well, and being a part of it. So just kind of since then, we, once the suspect was apprehended, we released the MCIs and got crews back. Yesterday, we had a kind of just a lot of elected officials in town. We met with local leaders, county leaders, state leaders, federal leaders, including a briefing similar to this arrangement with the governor. He asked about our firefighters. He actually was able to meet all of the firefighters who were presentations yesterday. And I think that was helpful for them to get the acknowledgement for their role. My hat's off to the sheriff's department, Captain Alden, Sheriff Corpus. Phenomenal job, phenomenal working relationship. I was a command with both of them. That from fairly early on, and just outstanding work and cooperation there. Really trusted relationship. Moving forward, we do have ESS, which is our support services for our personnel. They've already come and actually spoken to our crews, and I'll follow up with them as well. The mental health aspect for our employees is always kind of paramount. And then we're also going to do some after action lessons learned. For as tragic as it was, I think it opened a lot of eyes as to how close a lot of first responders got to being involved with it. And I think that there's a lot of lessons for us to learn. So we'll take that away. So that's it on the operation side. On the training side, we had paramedic training this week. As Director Hannah mentioned, we had the volunteer academy start last weekend, and we're planning for the rope rescue technician class that we have coming up. Facilities fairly minor, just we are painting the top of the generator of the new 41. It's been rusting. And apparatus, ERV is being outfitted still. The 2 new Pierces are in California. I can confirm that. They're in Sacramento, so they're closer. We actually made the decision to have the dealer do all of the mounting of the equipment that goes on there instead of doing it through a local vendor. And that really is just to try to get it here quicker. They can get it done while it's still at the dealership and then before it comes to us. We also have engine 40. The engine has been replaced, the new engine. They're just running through all their tests, and then we'll go to another mechanic to double check that the work is going to hold. And then finally, we ordered. You remember we ordered new self-contained breathing apparatuses, SCBAs, over a year ago, and we knew there was going to be a shipping delay, but we finally got them. So Captain Mingstein, I think, is planning on rolling those out with the new engines, so the entire people have them in SCBAs.
Great.
Report.
Sure. Questions, comments?
Thank you. What an incredible performance after the just physical longevity of exertion of the storms to turn around and then face the rescues that you did and then the shooting on Tuesday. It's just been Monday, sorry. It's been an extraordinary sequence of service all 12 weeks.
Yes.
Those 12 days. And I'm concerned for just the mental health recovery of those individuals who were right there on scene for a difficult situation. So thank you for assuring us that they are going to receive some sort of counseling or care or whatever the appropriate thing is following up to that.
Chief Armstrong.
I just wanted to mention 12 weeks of January, which Cox did incredibly well. So thank you for having me here this evening. Good seeing everybody in person.
Nothing else, ladies and gentlemen, without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.